Hello, everyone. I would like to briefly offer some commentary slash a response to quite literally the most pressing issue of our current times, and that is what we currently face, which is the threat of nuclear devastation. Of course, surrounding the situation that is ongoing in Ukraine, of course, involving Russia, Ukraine themselves, the United States, backed, of course, by their Western allies, and of course, remnants of other situations pertaining to the People's Republic of China, and etc. All of this kind of ties in together to bring forth the sort of perilous situation that we're all currently dealing with, because nuclear war is something that will indeed be felt by the collective and not any particular individual or minority group of people. So with that being said, I'd like to start off here from a pretty decent point, I would say. And so we recently got the news as of several days ago at this point. Excuse my lateness on this, but Russian leader Vladimir Putin recently annexed certain Ukrainian territories, or depending on how you look at this situation, you may say these were independent regions that had their own referendums and voted to ally with the Russians. And so he gave a speech in which he called on Kiev to immediately cease military action, and he vowed to protect the annexed lands with all the means at Russia's disposal. Take a look at this clip.
And the Kiev authorities, they should see this expression of will with respect. And that's the only way we can reach a peaceful solution. We will protect our lands with every means we have at our disposal. And we will do everything to provide safety for our people. This is the great liberating mission of our people.
Okay, so very strong words by the Russian leader Vladimir Putin. And of course, pretty much following this, the leader of the United States, current President Joe Biden, offered his own response, which is quite interesting in its own way. Now I would like you to take a look at this.
Well, the United States is never going to recognize this. And quite frankly, the world's not going to recognize it either. He can't seize his neighbor's territory and get away with it. As simple as that. And they're going to stay the course. They're going to continue to provide military equipment so that Ukraine can defend itself and its territory and its freedom, including additional resources that the Congress is going to give me today of $13 billion more to help the Ukrainians defend themselves and fight back. And we're fully prepared to defend. I want to say this again. America is fully prepared with our NATO allies to defend every single inch of NATO territory. Every single inch. So, Mr. Putin, don't misunderstand what I'm saying. Every inch.
I would like to repeat something that he said in that clip. He said, America is fully prepared with our NATO allies to defend every single inch of NATO territory, every single inch. Mr. Putin, don't misunderstand what I'm saying, every inch. This is incredible because one with half a brain, or maybe even a third, would question very intensely what he said. He says he's reaffirming that he in NATO will defend NATO territory. Well, we know that. Why is that his response to Vladimir Putin's annexing of these territories? Ukraine isn't in NATO. Ukraine isn't NATO territory. Therefore, anyone with a functioning brain would come to the conclusion that the US and NATO, therefore, have no right to defend Ukraine because they aren't NATO territories in this particular sense. Well, after we got this development, the leader of Ukraine, Mr. Zelinski, came out and basically signed this accelerated, expedited process of Ukraine to join NATO. Well, this is interesting because he found out very quickly what many of us already knew, and probably what he also knows deep down in his own soul, that the U.S. never had or has and will not have in the future any aim to get Ukraine into NATO, they have been very blatant and staunch with their approach to this proxy war that they're holding in Ukraine. They would like to use Ukraine, and U.S. politicians, Senate members, members of Congress have told us this previously. They want to fight Russia in Ukraine using the Ukrainians. They don't want to take this any further than that. They don't want to put boots on the ground in Ukraine, have American men and women go over to Ukraine to die and risk sparking something even larger. They're quite fine with this proxy war if they're using, of course, with the aim of weakening Russia. We've heard the fanatical romanticizations about forcing Putin out of power. Even Zelinski, once again, this extremely hopeful thinking. Zelensky, in response to Vladimir Putin wanting to hold peace negotiations at this new point, he says that they will not be holding peace negotiations or any kind of diplomatic talks with Vladimir Putin. They'll do it with the new president. He's also talked about that basically he's confirmed for us, Zelensky has, that this war will not end peacefully, but it will only end when the annexed territories are taken back from Russia. That won't happen. And when Crimea is taken back from Russia, that also won't happen. And once again, I would like to underscore that he also has this extremely fanatical type hyperbolic thinking that somehow Vladimir Putin will no longer be the president, the leader of Russia at the end of this. And so it brings us to a point where tensions are pretty much the highest they've ever been. So much to the point where the Cuban Missile Crisis pales in comparison to the current situation that we face in terms of being on the brink of Armageddon, of disaster, of nuclear war. And what better way to set the scene of pretty much death for us all than the liberal class to essentially do what they do best, and it is go full speed ahead toward nuclear disaster. So the media and all the politicians, specifically the more liberal politicians, have taken the stand to say that anyone that is against war, nuclear war, in any way, shape, or form, even offering the most docile type of oppositional remarks to their own beliefs and thinking, you're instantly ridiculed, you're castigated as some agent of the Kremlin, and you're of course an enemy. You're automatically dictated as an enemy. And I think that this is extremely important because not only with what's going on in Russia, but with them also going full speed ahead with this new Cold War on China with the situation in Taiwan. I need to remind you, Joe Biden, the president, has confirmed for us in that 60-minute CNN clip that, okay, they won't do boots on the ground in Ukraine. Ukraine really isn't going to join NATO, though they're not going to tell Vladimir Putin that and give him that satisfaction. When it comes to China and Taiwan, Joe Biden has said out of his own mouth with his own words, they will start a hot war with China over Taiwan. So China, in that respect, to the State Department, to the U.S. military-industrial complex, is that much more big of a threat that they'd be willing to spark a hot war with them over little old Taiwan. Whereas, as it pertains to Russia, as we've seen so far, they're content with using the Ukrainians to fight with the Russians over in Ukraine, over there, where we don't really have to worry about it, right? This is their thinking. And, it can just happen over there, and they're fine with the proxy war in that sense. And so all of these different things in combination with each other are coming to a head. And it seems like in this moment in time, being against war, being against disaster gets you awarded nothing but ridicule. And you're scorned, and you're not picking the right side. And I've engaged with people on this particular issue. And the thing that I find the most disturbing is that people, their first instinct seems to be to justify nuclear disaster, to justify if a hot war were to truly break out between nuclear armed powers. Well, what if this happens or if this happens first? No, not ever a mention of diplomacy, not ever a mention of we should avoid this first and foremost. There are ways that this entire situation pertaining to Ukraine could have been avoided in the first place, though we've landed ourselves here and now we must deal with it. But from the way that I see it, is that now in this moment, with all these things coming to a head seemingly, I believe that those of us that are truly anti-war and actually care about life, because at the end of the day, nothing is too great to overcome to the point where your only option is nuclear disaster. Quite literally the contrary. And people online, whoever it be, the liberals or whoever, will try to explain to you that no, this is definitely the only option. Vladimir Putin is some unique evil, and the only way we can respond to him is with nukes of our own. And as I wrap this up, I like to give you another piece of information before I forget. So Russia actually vetoed a UN resolution condemning the referendums to annex the quote-unquote Ukrainian territories. This is interesting because in that video clip that I showed you of Joe Biden said, of course, very adamantly that the United States and the rest of the world, he keeps saying this, the rest of the world, as if the rest of the world is united on Ukraine. I just made the video that 90% of the world disagrees with U.S. policy on Ukraine, whether it be on Ukraine as it pertains to, of course, in relation to Russia, but the sanction policy, the handling of the situation, they just don't agree. They just don't agree. They see things differently. But Russia vetoed the condemnation of that referendum, but also there were a select amount of countries that abstain from voting on this. And I think it's important because it's this whole, we're unified, the world will not accept this, as Biden and the Western leaders say. Russia vetoed. China, India, and Brazil abstained from voting on the UN Security Council resolution condemning the Russian annexation. I want to specifically anchor in on China and India. These are the two most populous places on the planet. The world is not united on this, Mr. Biden. By no means necessary.